All right, for more analysis, we'll speak to Necephor Mghendi. He's the head of the Afghanistan delegation of IFRC. Necephor, thank you very much for joining us. We just watched that very short clip on the challenges faced by the Afghanistan people. Just how worrying is it and dire is the humanitarian situation on the ground right now? And how much is the cold wave sort of adding to challenges that the country is already facing?
Thank you for having me, Julie and Steve. Indeed, the situation, as you're showing to your viewers, is quite dire in Afghanistan at the moment. The temperatures have dropped to sub-zero as I speak in Kabul. It's actually minus 11 degrees, you can see, and outside there it should be very warm for people who do not have adequate shelter. There are people who are living in minimum conditions, people who have been exposed to months or years, actually. This is the third year you have a drought, which is continuing. As you mentioned, also you have economic hardship. People have no money to buy the essentials for heating. And that's affecting people across the country, not just in Kabul, but in areas which normally go sub-zero, in some areas almost negative 30 degrees. The impact is that children, mostly who are most vulnerable, will die if they don't get warming. Same for vulnerable populations, including women, people who are frail, older, and that's dire in every part of the country. It's not just in Kabul.
And how has the ruling Taliban been trying to address the problems brought on by this coldest winter in 15 years? We've seen temperatures dip as low as minus 34 degrees Celsius. Or has this just sort of highlighted the limitations of their governance?
The conditions in Afghanistan, it's not just the winter. The winter comes in a backdrop of, let's say, one of the worst humanitarian crises in the world over the past 2 years. So it's just a combination of factors where you have droughts, which already meant more than 20 million people, actually the number is 28 million people, more than half the population of the country is already relying on humanitarian assistance. I remember Afghanistan was also relying on development assistance for programs that were even running the healthcare system. Now add to that the economic hardship, which came after the collapse of the banking system, and they cannot get jobs to the people. The authorities cannot manage this alone, so it takes the humanitarian organizations like ours to complement their efforts. They can do what they can, and really, but it's a vast country, massive needs, lesser money available, other hardship, and you add other complexities, then it becomes very difficult. So we are complimenting the authorities to reach assistance, but again, it's not enough to reach everyone.
What kind of sort of time frame are we sort of looking at or talking about before the situation sort of spirals out of control, or is that happening already?
Look, there are limitations right now. Not many some humanitarian organizations suspended activities in recent weeks following the ban on female NGO and INGO workers. That limits the number of organizations which can reach people out there. The ones which are operating like ours, the Afghan Red Crescent Society, trying their best to reach assistance, but this is not enough. The winter will continue. We still have weeks until March. The conditions will continue to be harsh, and people will need assistance. We are running against time here. Most important, to keep people warm, to prevent further preventable loss of death. I think that's the most important, to ensure that lives are not lost further, and to keep people warm. So we are providing heating materials. We're providing cash for people to buy what they need. We're also providing warm clothing, boots, jackets, shawls, whatever can get the people through this very harsh moment. Now, just to put in context, after winter, they will go to a situation where there's droughts, which is continuing. It's a third year in a row. Projections are saying because of La Nina, it may continue into the fourth year. And that means the conditions will continue beyond winter. And what will come is also during spring, there might be spring flooding. So it's not just the winter, but it's also what comes after the winter.
And talk to us about how NGOs are sort of operating in Afghanistan. Are you working through the Taliban, or are you having to work around the Taliban?
No, we've been working in Afghanistan for many years, including since we've had a presence here since 1990s, that time, and we're working in areas even before the transition. And we continue to work with our local partner, the Afghan Red Crescent Society, who continue to work in all parts of the country. They work through volunteers, and they have volunteers from those communities, men and women. They continue to deliver assistance. There are services for women which must be delivered by women, and those continue at this point. Of course, there are limitations, I would say restrictions in some cases where services that cannot be delivered by females. But that has not impacted us directly at this point. We are working with authorities. We continue to work with them. We negotiate for access, and that's working so far. And for the other organizations, of course, efforts are continuing from the wider humanitarian community to ensure that we can all start reaching those people who are in need. And that includes women and children. And the services which culturally have to be delivered by females for females.
And as for, we're hearing reports regarding the Taliban ban on women workers, that there could be encouraging signs that Taliban may revisit those guidelines. How much of a welcome news is that?
And I think that's a step in the right direction. I believe that the authorities, for whatever reasons, it's most important to find what prompted them in the first place to put that ban, and to ask them to make sure that that can be reversed, and possible, if possible, also restrictions can be, say, authorizations and exceptions can be made for organizations to reach people right now, especially from the humanitarian sense. Those guidelines will be welcome because the effort has to be done by the entire humanitarian community. No single organization can reach a country. As I mentioned, more than half the population of the country is in need of humanitarian assistance. It cannot be done by any single entity.
Yeah, thank you, Necephor, for your time this morning and also the good work you're doing over there. Necephor Mghendi, head of the Afghanistan delegation at IFRC.